What inspires me daily?
Tricked or conned? Lowest point. What can I share?
First of all, what's your name and what do you do?
My name's Jon Simmons. I work in the School of Economics and Finance at a London leading university, and my role is to engage with the financial services industry, economics industry, and fintech to secure internships for our undergraduate and postgraduate students.
Tell us about the first time you tried to start a business.
First time I tried to set up a business, I kind of went full in. It was a CV writing business, and my business partner and I went full in to build a website, and we just kind of assumed that there'd be a demand, and we kind of built the structure, the information architecture and then started to design our business website. So we didn't really go in with the business model planning or sort of testing cash flow and things like that. So it was a good experience to sort of work closely, and we got quite a lot done in a short space of time. We didn't really look at the sustainability of the long-term sort of effects of client retention, regular acquisition of new customers, and we learned a lot. Subsequently, he ended up buying me out of that business because it wasn't quite enough for us both to live on full-time. So he left the full-time job we were both in, and it was an exciting time, but we parted, and after 2 years of trading as a partnership, we kind of parted, we shook hands, and we're still friends.
What did you want to be when you were a kid?
In addition to the professional footballer, I really like working in, thinking about like sort of MI5 and all that sort of stuff, Secret Service. Benefiting the nation, like helping the country against spies and all that sort of stuff.
Tell us your proudest moment to date as a business person or as in your career.
It was taking a group of musicians to play in Israel and the West Bank, Palestine, to sort of bring the healing and restoration power of live music to one of the most politically contested areas of the world. And the challenges we faced in the run-up to that, and the challenges we faced when we were on the tour, was sort of really noticeable, and took its toll. But we overcame them, and then part of that, a year later, was opening a prayer room, international prayer room in Bethlehem, and we faced sort of a lot of difficulties in that, not a complaint, but it's just the reality. And praise God, we successfully opened this prayer room out there. So that was a real testing of my energy and stamina, and ability to sort of overcome and try and find a solution in a short space of time. Yeah.
What's your strongest character trait?
I can find common ground with people, on even if they're complete political, religious, or whatever feeling mindset to me. I can like to think I can find out something that I can resonate with someone.
In business, what's the most you've ever lost or made in a day?
In business, I've made probably about 1,000 in a day that was mine, not belonging to another business. Through it's about 1,100 through self-employment projects. I've lost on a trade on the equity markets on London Stock Exchange. I've lost about 600 in a day on a trade, and I would have lost more if I didn't cut it at that point. So yeah.
If we gave you £1 million tax-free, what would you do with it?
I would, I'd put probably about 20% of that into the S&P 500 in America. I'd probably put 20% into government bonds, maybe UK government bonds. I'd probably put the remaining 60% into property, actually, outside of London. Yeah.
Do you think capitalism is an evil or a good thing?
Fundamentally a good thing, but it can be totally misused. I think sort of human nature will abuse any system, whether it's socialism or capitalism. So I kind of describe myself as a conscious capitalist. How can we use capitalism? How can we use money generation, accumulation of wealth to benefit the wider society, and distribute that amongst the poor? Which some might say is socialism, but I believe that's conscious capitalism. I think it's fundamentally a good thing if certain moralities and ethics are intertwined into that system.
What's the most difficult customer or client or business relationship you've ever had to deal with?
Difficult customer for me is when they just didn't really understand their target market. I was doing some marketing consultancy for a firm, and they just really didn't sort of know. They made a couple of assumptions and gave me direction on who to target to execute this online campaign. And I kind of disagreed that was their target audience because they'd made a few assumptions without doing any market testing, and they spent a lot of money with not much conversion. And they wanted to sort of blame the execution of the campaign, but I felt it was the money we were spending to acquire that small pot of customers was the low conversion rate was the end result. And that was a tricky time, and I tried to give them sort of concepts and explain, but they just didn't really want to hear it. Like, no, this is who we're targeting, and this is who want the product.
Have you ever been tricked or conned in business?
Yes, I was using a freelancer to do some copywriting for some content on a blog, and I was going via one of the outsourcing websites, quite a well-known one. And this lady, we agreed the sort of contract for the work, and she kind of reached out to me only sort of 20% into the actual project rollout. And she said, I'm actually really hard up, I'm going through a difficult time financially, I've got these kids and all this sort of stuff. And she said to a few things to me, and I was like, oh, that's interesting because I'm interested in that. And so I gave her an advance payment of around £300, which was a small part of the overall project budget. And then sure enough, didn't hear from her because I kind of paid for her outside of the exchange that we were using. And I just thought, well, obviously she Googled me and found out what I was interested in. And so yeah, that was a kick in the teeth. But forgive her wherever she is and what she's doing.
Yeah, so tell us about your most difficult time as an entrepreneur and what you learned from that.
Managing cash flow and keeping the commitment to invoices and ongoing monthly payments, keeping the balance of that. Like, what is it that's the priority payment for this month? Who do I need to pay for this? Like, who do I need to pay at this certain deadline? And I think setting a difficult time I've had as an entrepreneur is kind of setting expectation on client delivery. So this is what you paid for, this is what you're getting. Anything in addition to that, like mission creep or scope creep is what are different terms that have been used. That is something I think you need to learn quite early on when you're in business. Like, this is a package, you bought that package, anything in addition to this, it will be extra costs because we've agreed this. And I know a lot of entrepreneurs, they want to please the client and they want to keep them, but I think it's about pleasing them, but also working within the contract you've and the commitment you've made.
Tell us about the time you almost gave up and then carried on.
Well, I almost gave up with IsraelInvestment.org. I outsourced the web development to an Indian agency, and they just gave me a real difficulty in meeting the deadlines on this project, and they just didn't understand the brief, despite multiple Skype calls and various other sort of engagements over email and things like that. So I just almost gave up. So I'm right. You keep the money I paid you for this project. I'm now going to go elsewhere. But with a little bit of patience and a little bit getting confirmation that they understood each step of the project. We got there, we got the site live and launched in time, the time that I set about. Yeah, so the benefit was perseverance with them and patience, and just taking extra steps to be clearer on the comms and getting validation that they understand what I'm talking about was the lesson learned, and I'm glad we persevered.
What would you say is your biggest insecurity?
Numeracy, and looking at sort of like, okay, so we've got this project and this amount of spend on it, and I'm insecure about managing big budgets, even though I have managed budgets, but it's just other people's money. I get a little bit sort of impatient and generally insecure and fearful of making a big blunder.
What's the hardest thing about being an entrepreneur?
I think setting milestones and keeping to deadlines and paying yourself first, I think is quite difficult. And making sure that you're budgeting for your time and making sure that I've spent this amount of time with this is what I need to invoice the client, or this is what I need to stop now, I need to stop.
In terms of your business, how much were you making at its highest point per year?
So the highest point I've made on one of the business that I'll refer to now is I think it was about 2,400 is the most I made in 1 month. The lowest I made in a month was about 300.
What do you think is the biggest mistake most entrepreneurs make?
I think a lot of entrepreneurs go in and set something up or produce product or service without really testing whether the market wants it. They don't validate the concept, and they spend a lot of money early on before validation has been made, whether this is something that's needed. We see problems in the world and we want to fix them, but we don't necessarily know that our solution is the solution the market wants, but we run in with the assumption that it is based on feedback from friends and family and fools.
What inspires you daily?
What inspires me daily is seeing entrepreneurs that have positively changed the world with their sort of philanthropy and their willingness to sort of add value beyond their own pursuit of money. That sends a signal to me that money on its own won't bring happiness. So be a blessing. So what can I do with these two hands and then what I've been given to add value to the world? That's what kind of motivates me, rather than just selfish consumption of wealth, and it's not enough. I don't think it's a healthy mindset.
Do you think poverty is a choice?
I think it can be, yeah. Not always. I think a mindset of poverty can be a choice. An economic environment you're born into, if you're born into a slum in Nairobi, then that's not a choice. That's the tough card that you've been dealt. But then your mindset towards money and your mindset of whether you want to live to give or just accumulate for yourself is a choice. I think people often play the victim of their circumstance, and I'm very fortunate to be in a country now, or to be raised in a country where I have the opportunity, regardless of my parents' socioeconomic background. We're in an environment, and I'm extremely grateful for that. Now, I could choose to be poor or have poor, lower aspirations in this society, or I could choose to want to benefit the society and think of solutions in order to add value to people's lives.
Did you ever take on debt to start a business?
No.
Never?
No. I would take on debt if the concept had been validated. So I had a regular cash flow and clients that signed contracts for a certain duration. Then I could prove to friends, family, or fools, or also to the banks or VC, not VCs, first too small scale for that. But then I could justify the request for a loan. But as much as possible, I'd like to try and get a customer or a client at the minimum cost to build that business. So I'd like to sort of save pots of money. So I'm going to put this, say like $100 for whatever venture.
If you was the leader of the world, what would your first action be?
I'd probably, not that I'm an environmental campaigner or it's particularly my passion, but these seem to be consuming resources at a rate that's unsustainable for our children. And I'd probably want to look at if I was a world leader, how, bring all the economists and scientists together and various people and think, what are we doing now? And I know people are doing that anyway, obviously the UN and various other projects. I'd probably want to try and create a fairer society where more of a meritocracy rather than a sort of the wealth disparity that we have now amongst nations and communities within nations.
What's the most shameful thing you've ever done for money, or embarrassing thing?
I've sold stuff like private possessions for below market value in order to get money quite quickly, because to pay a bill or whatever, so not get into debt.
And lastly, if you could have a short saying or short phrase or something that you think might motivate a viewer who's interested in becoming an entrepreneur.
Live to give, add value to others, honesty, decency and integrity.